I've done this video once before, roughly around 2 years ago, but I took that video down mainly because I really didn't like how it came out. Plus my standards for video making has kind of grew over the years. And a huge reason as to why I'm making this video again is simple. It's about two subjects that I love talking about, that being metal music and H.P. Lovecraft. Howard Phillips Lovecraft, or as most people just refer to him as H.P. Lovecraft, was a science fiction author who was born in Providence, Rhode Island in the year of 1890 and passed away at the age of 46 years old in 1937. During his lifespan, he really didn't have any form of financial success with the stories and mythos that he created that was often ignored by the general public. However, it wouldn't be until a few decades after his death in the 70s when his stories got republished that he would find a whole new audience for what he created. So much so that the legacy and impact on really anything that has to do with horror would become undeniable, that it really created its own genre in the medium known as cosmic horror. Just in case you're unaware of what cosmic horror is, a simple definition of it is the idea of there are things out there in the cosmos beyond the human comprehension that just knowing of it would drive someone mad. Or as H.P. Lovecraft puts it, that the oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear. And the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. Sidetracking a bit and giving my own personal experiences of how I got to know of H.P. Lovecraft is, funny enough, I heard the term Lovecraftian or Lovecraft inspired first, that I always would think it wasn't someone's last name, it was just a form of an art direction or aesthetic. For example, some of the earliest memories that I have of getting to be familiar with Lovecraft in any form was when I was a teenager. I was really big into the whole Alien franchise and being always so mesmerized by the look and design of the Xenomorph. And curious to know who designed it, it would be H.R. Geiger. And he stated in interviews that a lot of his artwork and even the design for the Xenomorph, he was inspired by Lovecraft. Or when I was in high school, I had an English teacher who made us read a bit of Stephen King novels, and she stated that Stephen King was inspired by Lovecraft, or some of his works would come off looking and sounding Lovecraftian. To even other films that I was watching around that time, such as The Mist or Event Horizon, I would read reviews or hear people talk about it, and they would always describe it as Lovecraftian. It wouldn't be until I started getting into extreme metal that my interest for Lovecraft would reach an all-time high, because I would consistently see albums with album artwork and band merchandise with this squid-like creature known as Cthulhu, that it made me realize Lovecraftian isn't just so much an aesthetic, but its origins stem from one individual. From there on out, I became obsessed with everything and anything that had to do with H.P. Lovecraft. Started buying the books and reading his stories. Come to find out there are still authors out there continuing the mythos to this day. I got them tattooed on my arm, and a whole arm really even dedicated to the entities of Lovecraft, and even took it to the next step and requested that Maxine Ducati do a portrait of H.P. Lovecraft, all painted in his own blood. Now, getting back on track here, I feel like it's undeniable, and we can all agree on this, that metal loves Lovecraft. Out of all the different forms of art that's out there, Lovecraft's influence is undeniable when it comes to at least cosmic horror of any kind. To even in cinema, his work has been adapted onto the big screen, such as The Reanimator, From Beyond, and most recently, to my knowledge, Color Out of Space, along with a handful of other films that aren't explicitly off of his mythos or stories, but take great influence from it. However, when it comes to the music scene, I do feel like Lovecraft's influence is a lot larger than people give it credit for. While it's established that Lovecraft's influence in extreme metal is undeniable, What's worth mentioning here, and it's noted to be one of, if not the first ever group to utilize Lovecraft's mythos and stories as a form of inspiration for their lyrical themes, would be a psychedelic rock group from the 1960s called, and it's extremely on the nose here, H.P. Lovecraft. And what's kind of funny about bringing these guys up is a humongous bulk of their lyrical content has to do with relationships and love songs, which is really extremely unorthodox regardless of time period or context to attach it with Lovecraft of any sense. But they have one song on their debut full-length album called White Ships, which is in reference to a Lovecraft story called Dream Quest of the Unknown Kadath. Speaking of music inspired by the Lovecraftian mythos outside of the world of metal, it's also worth mentioning that Deadmau5, Blue Oyster Cult, and even the anarcho-punk band Rudimentary Peni have all done songs dedicated or referencing the Lovecraftian mythos. As for the first ever metal band to utilize the Lovecraftian mythos in their lyrical themes, look no further than what is considered to be the first ever metal band in general, Black Sabbath. On their debut full-length album, they have a song called Behind the Wall of Sleep, which is in reference to the short story written by Lovecraft called Beyond the Wall of Sleep. But as I've talked about a few times in this video thus far, Lovecraft's influence really shines through the most in the worlds of extreme metal, where things are faster and darker. And a prime example of that, when they were more in the realms of extreme metal, that being the legendary thrash metal band Metallica. Take, for example, on their second full-length album, Ride the Lightning, there's an instrumental track on there called The Call of Cthulhu, which is extremely on the nose, but their bassist at the time, Cliff Burton, had high fascination with the Lovecraftian mythos. And I like how this is an instrumental track that just kind of plays with the idea of, Lovecraft and cosmic horror, as there's no vocals, thus you really can't explain the horrors of anything to do with like cosmic horror, so it definitely really ties in quite well with the idea and aesthetic of what Lovecraft is all about. Then of course there's the legendary death metal band Morbid Angel. When you take into account their guitarist's stage name, Trey Azagoth, it's a play on reference to the Lovecraftian entity known as Azathoth. And when you listen to their second full-length album, Blessed Are the Sick, they have a song titled The Ancient Ones, which is another reference to the Lovecraftian entities known as the Ancient Ones. It's no secret that Morbid Angel has a lot of themes and references based off of the Lovecraftian mythos, but it's worth mentioning here that Morbid Angel really got the ball rolling, for at least when it comes to the themes of what you could do with death metal and explore all of these evil and twisted ideas, that they really laid out the groundwork for really pushing the envelope for the Lovecraftian mythos to be somewhat of a blueprint for lyrical references. Other bands worth mentioning that have nods to the Lovecraftian mythos would be something like Septic Flesh with their album Communion. I believe it's the second song on the album is titled Lovecraft's Death, which is really cool because the whole song, when you read the lyrics, has all different references to Lovecraft stories. Then you got the stoner doom metal band Electric Wizard. They have a song called Dunwich, which is in reference to the Dunwich Horror. To even the Black Dahlia Murder, that has a song called Thy Cosmic Horror, which is in reference to the Call of Cthulhu. In short, there are too many bands to name here in this video alone that pay homage to the Lovecraftian mythos with one or two songs that they have wrote. But then there are bands that take it to the next level, that not only have songs and albums inspired and paying homage to the Lovecraftian mythos, but even their band name as well. From what I was able to find, what is considered to be the very first example of an extreme metal band going full out with everything based off of the Lovecraftian mythos is considered to be the first ever funeral doom metal band, that being Thergothon, with their debut demo called Fhtagn Nag Yogg-Sothoth. Obviously, if you want to get into funeral doom metal, Thergothon is a phenomenal place to start. As I stated, they are considered to be one of the very first and pioneers of funeral doom metal. Even their debut full-length album, Streams from the Heavens, is often classified as the first true example of funeral doom. But what's interesting to point out here with their demo is that often people will characterize this as like Lovecraftian metal or Lovecraftian doom metal or like Lovecraftian death metal, which now invokes the question of, is Lovecraftian also a certain sound that goes with extreme metal or music in general? And arguably, no, it doesn't have any true characteristics. We're going off of themes here. But there are arguments to state that Lovecraftian metal of some kind does have a certain vibe with it, as it's supposed to be dark, cryptid, and almost alien-like in nature. And when you listen to this Thergothon demo, yeah, it's extremely dark and cryptid in the sense of like there's some kind of like entity lurking out there, which is another part of this video I'll discuss later on with like the sound of Lovecraftian metal. But in terms of vibe, it kind of needs to work with the lyrical themes at hand here. But again, it's really worth mentioning that one of the first true examples of just like straight up, no holds barred, everything has to do with the Lovecraftian mythos is this Thergothon demo right here. Other bands worth mentioning that went all out in the Lovecraftian mythos with their themes would be a personal favorite of mine, Shub Nagarath, which is a Mexican death metal band heavily inspired by Morbid Angel when it comes to their songwriting. But Shub Nagarath is in reference to the Lovecraftian entity of the same name, of the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young. Another Mexican death metal band called Rilye, which is in reference to a fictional town in the Lovecraft universe. Necronomicon, which is a Canadian death metal band, and their band name takes influence from the Book of the Dead, the Necronomicon, which appears in the Lovecraftian mythos. A little bit more of a deep cut, but I need to include Catacomb. This is a French death metal band that I believe recently they released a full-length album, but I'll always treasure their demo work. That being The Maze of Kadath and Lurker at the Threshold. This is a compilation of the two. Obviously, both are in references to short stories of Lovecraft's work, along with the fact, too, that their demo literally has album artwork of Cthulhu. And two last-minute additions that I want to include would be The Great Old Ones, a French atmospheric black metal band, and Sulphur Aeon, a German death metal band. Everything they do, from their songs, albums, and album artwork, has references towards Lovecraft's literature. The only other band worth mentioning here that attaches Lovecraft's mythos with their lyrical themes, with their songwriting, would be Portal. However, what makes Portal a bit different from the rest of the pack is where, when it comes to authors that continue on the Cthulhu mythos or any of the Lovecraft mythos, is they continue it on with their own kind of unique little twist, or kind of branch it off into their own kind of unique mythos. With Portal, while they do have songs in reference to some of Lovecraft's short stories, what they tend to do when it comes to their albums is they're continuing it on, but with their own mythos, their own unique little identities, and their own kind of forms of abstract horror that are still connected or take great influence from Lovecraft's work. With all these bands having such influence with Lovecraft, one might think now that Lovecraftian death metal or Lovecraftian doom metal is its own unique thing, which I talked about this earlier on in the video, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into the idea of a band being Lovecraftian. Can it be its own unique kind of thing musically now, not just its lyrics? To be blunt, no, not really. Take, for example, something is considered to be Lovecraftian death metal. What that really is it's basically a death metal band that has lyrical themes to do with Lovecraft. However, I have seen discussions that if you really start diving into the aesthetics of what makes something Lovecraftian with its overall artistic values that you can kind of create a certain form of like Lovecraftian music. Take for example Blue Dahlia Nord's 2022 full-length album Disharmonium Undreamable Abysses. I remember when this album came out, so many people were talking about how frightening and alien-like it was in terms of its structure and atmosphere, that people were just straight up saying that this is Lovecraftian metal. Not even like black metal or experimental black metal like Blue Dahlia Nord is mostly called, but they experimented and made everything so, you know, alien-like in nature that it kind of resembles what like a Lovecraftian story would sound like. But again, that's only just one example. For a style of music to really have its own unique characteristics, I do feel like there needs to be a certain scene attached with it. And in order for Lovecraftian extreme metal to really be sonically its own unique thing, more bands would really have to start diving into stuff like what Blue Dahlia Nord did on their 2022 full-length album, and not dive in so much with just the themes of it. With all this stated, I've wondered what's the deal with Lovecraft's influence being so integrated in the extreme metal scene, and I feel like there's a few key reasons as to why. For starters, metal's sound, regardless of what subgenre or niche little thing you can think about, its sound has always been about being larger than life. Well, what's larger than life than cosmic horrors beyond our comprehension? Then look at the themes that metal seems to be attracted to, as it's either very extreme or has themes to do with horror. Well, H.P. Lovecraft is all about cosmic horror, so that checks out. And a lot of the themes you'll notice in Lovecraft's short stories has to do with either nihilism or occultism. But what I personally believe is a humongous key component that attracts the two is the limitless possibilities you can do with Lovecraft. Take for example one of Lovecraft's entities being, Yog-Sothoth, one of my personal favorites. When you search up this entity, there are so many different art pieces depicting what Yog-Sothoth would look like. And that's the thing. When it comes to Lovecraft stories, there is no definitive one form that it takes. It could be a bunch of eyeballs and tentacles and teeth all merged together, changing every second. And when you look at pictures of Yog-Sothoth on the internet, they're all different. They all have different little details about them that really makes it kind of hard to depict, again, exactly what you're looking for other than the template of what I just said. So now think of a band in metal describing Yog-Sothoth. Even if they were to describe it in the same exact way in each individual song, and they play all their songs in different ways, or the atmosphere, the tone, the vibe, the tempos, all different, you're all going to imagine Yog-Sothoth differently. Thus, you have these limitless possibilities on just describing the entities. God forbid you get into all the niche little things in terms of the setting, the mood, and the plot of what they're trying to create based off of the Lovecraft mythos that, as I stated, I really do feel like the possibilities are endless in the ways of depicting Lovecraft entities and its stories, that you have like this endless material to work with. While H.P. Lovecraft in his own personal life was anything but metal, as he hated drinking, smoking, partying, being social, and if anything, if he saw me with the tattoos or all of these individuals continuing his mythos and celebrating what he did, more than likely he would be disgusted by what has become of his mythos and legacy. But what's attracted his work so much, I believe, with metal's whole scene is just how adjacent and extreme his stories were to what metal seems to be attracted to. Thus, I've always looked at H.P. Lovecraft that he's one of the most metal individuals that never did anything metal to begin with. In conclusion, with everything I've said in this video, again, I'm only scratching the surface of what I know about Lovecraft and metal's relation with each other. And I know for a fact his influence has spread in so many other mediums I briefly talked about, that you know, there's no way a YouTube video can fully encompass Lovecraft's impact on just art itself. And I'm very much aware that for years to come, probably until the end of time, Lovecraft's work will be continuously celebrated until basically the end of time, I feel like, just solely because of how impactful his work is. And I'm really curious to know what you think of Lovecraft's influence within metal, what other bands worth mentioning or talking about, or other ideas that really kind of led to Lovecraft's influence really being integrated into extreme metal as a whole. Really curious to know. And that'll do it for this video, guys. Like always, everything I talked about will be linked below in the description, and that is that. So like always, make sure you guys drink plenty of water to stay hydrated, and have a great day.